Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, okay, so we're going on. Let's go to text number 25.
Recording in progress.
Text number 25. When the Vṛndāvana forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and jumbo fruits, Lord Krishna, surrounded by his cows and cowherd boyfriends and accompanied by Sri Balaram, entered that forest to enjoy. So this is Lord Krishna's mood. Lord Krishna, of course, is the reservoir of all pleasure, and he's the supreme enjoyer. And one of the ways in which he enjoys, which is very dear to his heart, is in the Vṛndāvana forest with all the cowherd boys and with the cows, and enjoying the beauty of the forest, as described here with the different fruits like dates and jumbo fruits. And we heard how it was so colourful. So those cowherd boys, they're actually his eternal associates from the spiritual world. They've come to take part in his pastimes there in Vṛndāvana. And that Vṛndāvana, of course, is the replica of Vṛndāvana, Goloka Vṛndāvana in the spiritual world. So Lord Krishna is enjoying the beauty of the forest. And this is how to enjoy. You see, to enjoy, it's not that we have to have a lot of things. We can enjoy the beauty of nature and the cows, of course, as well. A very important part of nature. Because this planet is actually the property of the cows. This cow, the presiding deity of the earth planet is Mother Bhumi, and she's in the form of a cow. So the cows actually belong to this planet. And they're very important. We have to take care of the cows. The cows are domestic creatures. They need us, and we need them. Just as much as they need us, we need them also, because they provide the most valuable foodstuffs. And without milk, then we can't get ghee. And without ghee, there's no yagya. So how can we perform sacrifices without cows? Okay, we'll go ahead. Text number 26. The cows had to move slowly because of their weighty milk bags, but they quickly ran to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as soon as he called them, their affection for him causing their udders to become wet. And Srila Prabhupada comments, the cows, being fed by new grasses, became very healthy, and their milk bags were all very full. When Lord Krishna called them by name, they immediately came to him out of affection, and in their joyful condition, the milk flowed from their bags. So this is the condition of the cows in the time of Lord Krishna. When the cows are given proper love and care, then they provide so much milk. They're so happy. They will give the milk freely. And so much milk that even the fields would be flooded with milk. So this was the condition of the planet in the time of Lord Krishna. Going ahead, text number 27. The Lord saw the joyful Aborigine girls of the forest, the trees dripping sweat sap, and the mountain waterfalls, whose resounding indicated that there were caves nearby. So the Aborigine girls, the native girls, they're sometimes mentioned in the pastimes of Lord Krishna. We'll hear about them when we go on to the Venu Gita, because there's some incidences, some verses there talking about the Aborigine girls and how they were also affected by Lord Krishna and his flute playing. So again, Sukadeva Goswami is describing the beauty of the forest, the trees dripping sweet sap, and the mountain waterfalls. So you can imagine how wonderful the whole place must have been. We hear about that also, Govardhan. In Govardhan, there was also waterfalls. Now, of course, not, but in the past, like that. Text 28. When it rained, the Lord would sometimes enter a cave or the hollow of a tree to play and to eat roots and fruits. So, in the course of the autumn season, sometimes it would rain also. The rainy season just finishing, coming to an end. So the rain would be not so much, but sometimes it would rain. And when it would rain, then go into the cave and take shelter. And Lord Krishna would enjoy eating some of the kunda and mula roots, and the pala, the fruits. So these things were growing naturally. The roots were growing. There were two different kinds of roots. One was under the ground, and one was a little bit above the ground. Just had a bit of the root in the ground, and one was fully under the ground. But Lord Krishna, it said in the rainy season, and at the end of the rainy season, then these roots would be very nice to eat. And Lord Krishna would enjoy to eat these things, roots and fruits. Children, they enjoy to eat these kind of things. So they go in the cave or the hollow of a tree to play and to eat. Sanatana Goswami explains this, that during the rainy season, bulbs and roots are very tender and palatable, and Lord Krishna would eat them along with wild fruits found in the forest. Lord Krishna and his young boyfriends would sit in the hollow of a tree or within a cave and enjoy pastimes while waiting for the rain to stop. And then text 29 describes more about what Lord Krishna would eat for his meal. Coming out for the day, he'd leave in the morning, they'd all go out together, all the cowherd boys, they'd go out and take the calves with them. And so they would bring their lunchbox with them. So Lord Krishna is described here, he would take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of Lord Sankarshan and the cowherd boys who regularly ate with him. They would all sit down to eat on a large stone near the water. So Lord Krishna, you can see he's eating food very appropriate for that place. Yogurt, of course, there'd be a lot of yogurt there in Vṛndāvana because his father has so many cows. And so with so many cows, there'd be so much milk. And with all that milk, they'd make some yogurt. So Lord Krishna would eat rice and yogurt, very cooling in the hot weather. So Lord Krishna would eat that kind of food. We know we offer to Lord Krishna every day when cooking for Krishna. Lord Krishna likes to eat rice and dal and chapati, sabjis and these things. But here, Lord Krishna's in the field in the summertime, so he's taking rice and yogurt. And it was like that. Lord Brahma, it was described in earlier pastime. Lord Brahma was observing Lord Krishna, and he saw Lord Krishna with the with the ball of yogurt in his hand, yogurt rice in his hand, in his left hand, right? It describes he was holding the yogurt rice in his left hand. So Lord Brahma saw the situation, and Lord Brahma was surprised that he is my Lord and Master, and he's eating simple food like this, rice and yogurt, very simple fare, but very satisfying for the stomach, definitely. If you have, if we have problems with the stomach, we sometimes eat too much oily food, and too much spicy food, we can easily get stomach problems. But Lord Krishna enjoys, as a child, he enjoyed naturally milk, yogurt and rice, boiled rice. So it's very cooling for the body in the hot season. So we're hearing the rainy season pretty much finished, not quite, just about finished. Okay, text 30:31. Lord Krishna watched the contented bulls, calves and cows sitting on the green grass and grazing with closed eyes. And he saw that the cows were tired from the burden of their heavy milk bags. Thus, observing the beauty and opulence of Vṛndāvana, there's a hint here. What's the arrangement? Yeah? Rasa, yes, the rasa dance, right. The rasa dance is coming up. The rasa dance is going to be described. That's coming up in a few chapters. You'll hear Lord Krishna's rasa dance, which is Krishna's own internal potency. So everything has to be arranged for that for the pleasure pastimes of Lord Krishna. Right, Krishna comes here to enjoy. Krishna doesn't come here to kill the demons. That's made very clear. To kill the demons, Krishna can do that anyway. He can do that easily with his different potencies. He doesn't have to do that himself. But he comes here personally for the purpose of pleasing his devotees, giving pleasure to all of his devotees. That's very important. Lord Krishna wants to please all of his devotees. And this is the greatest pleasure for Lord Krishna, being with, of course, the gopis. And to enhance these pastimes, there has to be the suitable place. And the best place and all the creation is Vṛndāvana. And the best time of the year is also that Sarat season. So you will hear that coming up to the Sarat season and the time for the rasa dance, all perfect for enjoyment, for Lord Krishna to enjoy in the company of all of his confidential devotees. So this is the nature of Krishna's pastimes. Okay, we'll go ahead, text 32. While Lord Rama and Lord Keshava were thus dwelling in Vṛndāvana, the fall season arrived, when the sky is cloudless, the water clear, and the wind gentle. Okay, so the rainy season has come and gone, and now we're in the fall, or we would call it the autumn. Right? The sky is cloudless, the water clear, the wind gentle. Quite a transformation from the rainy season. Text 33 describes the autumn season, which regenerated the lotus flowers, also restored the various bodies of water to their original purity, just as the process of devotional service purifies the minds of the fallen yogis when they return to it. So the indication here is that someone may be practicing yoga and they may at some point become disturbed, may become mentally agitated, some problem somehow or other comes up within their mind, and they may give up their practice, they may give up their spiritual practice. But then after some time, they again come back. So we see that phenomena. Those of you who are managing centers in Krishna consciousness, I'm sure you have to deal with this from time to time. People, devotees for some time, and sometimes they have some, they're not fully prepared, and they may go away for some time, and then after some time they again come back. Do you have any of you have this experience with some of your devotees? Do you allow them to come back? Are you accommodating when people give up devotional service and they go off for some time? Do you welcome them back into the community again when they return?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes? Any conditions? Do you make any adjustments?
No conditions.
Oh.
If he starts practicing, then gradually we put conditions.
Uh-huh. And do you find that generally it's successful? If somebody goes away, comes back, generally once they come back they'll be more serious?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes people just need more time to mentally prepare themselves to enter into a kind of monastic life. It's not so easy sometimes to live in an ashram. There can be many challenges, and certainly, there'll be doubts which come in the mind, and then we have also attachments, different family affairs and so on. So we may have to leave for some time, but then we decide that actually the life I want is actually there, and then we'll come back. And so this example is given here. We see this in nature, that in the autumn season, the lotus flowers restored the various bodies of water to their original purity. So in the rainy season, the water is all muddy and mixed with so many things, it's not so clear. But then when the autumn comes and the rain stops, then the water becomes more pure. So it's described like that, devotional service purifies the minds. Prabhupada was always very accommodating people who left the movement, and Prabhupada would always encourage them to come back. And of course, when you come back, what is the proper atonement? Just simply take up devotional service. There's nothing more to be done. Just simply take up devotional service. That is the actual atonement. We don't have to do anything else. And just continue. And devotional service is not lost. Whatever service we've done in the past, that's to our credit. So we have to go on from where we left off. All right. We'll go ahead, text number 34. Autumn cleared the sky of clouds. Let the animals get out of their crowded living conditions, cleaned the earth of its covering of mud, and purified the water of contamination in the same way that loving service rendered to Lord Krishna frees the members of the 4 spiritual orders from their respective troubles. So this is an interesting verse. We want to look at this, right? Autumn cleared the sky of clouds. All the rain had fallen, so the clouds became, white clouds, no more black clouds, no more rain clouds. And let the animals get out of their crowded living conditions. Why would the animals be in crowded living conditions? Someone like to say?
Miles, can I speak?
Please.
Because when rains are there, they can't sit here and there on the fields, which are very, very wet. But now because rains are gone, they can sit at places in the fields also. Especially cows have a lot of difficulty when rains are there. They don't have places to sit.
Yeah, and also sometimes some parts of the world it's very cold. Sometimes they have to take the animals into the barn, bring them in the barn, so their movements will be restricted. Maybe it will be even crowded in the barn. So like that, sometimes. But once the autumn comes, then they get out and they're happy to get their freedom. And then the next example is given about clean the earth of its covering of mud. Autumn cleaned the earth of its covering of mud. Of course, with the rain, naturally there'd be a lot of mud. But when the autumn comes, then that mud will dry. It's going to become dry and become firm again. In the time of the rain, when it's rainy, it's muddy everywhere, it's slippy, dangerous. But once the rains go, and then everything becomes dry, and the earth becomes hardened. So this was autumn, purifying. And then the third thing, purified the water of contamination. So the water of contamination, that this due to the rainy season again, that the water, all the mud in the bottom of the bed of the lake or the river, all the mud will come up and we'll see the water very dirty looking in the rainy season. But after the rainy season, in the autumn, then everything settles down and the water also becomes clear, no more contamination. So this is compared to loving service rendered to Krishna, frees the members of the 4 spiritual orders from their respective troubles. Right? Brahmacharis, what kind of trouble does a brahmachari have? You know, those of you who are probably grihastas, you think brahmachari, they don't have any troubles. Huh? Does brahmachari have trouble? Who should we should ask? Who is the brahmachari? Srinivas Gopal Prabhu? Do brahmacharis have troubles?
Yes, Maharaj.
What troubles they have?
First, staying as a brahmachari in brahmachari ashram is the biggest problem. So you have to maintain, you have to be protected, we have to be protected ourselves.
Okay.
And we like when the grihasthas they invite, we have to eat, we have to accept, and we may get contaminated our consciousness.
Oh.
Especially newly, if somebody comes, if they invite us, and for the sake of preaching, we go and do the kirtan and all that, then we have to accept some prasadam from there.
Oh, you have to accept prasadam from there. It may not be up to our standards. And you may not be hungry, you may not be wanting, it may not be the right time for you to eat.
And sometimes they forcefully feed us and we have to take.
Yes, right. Okay, so that's a minor austerity, of course. Yeah, okay, that's one trouble from the brahmacharis. Anybody else like to talk about brahmachari troubles?
Brahmachari feels, Maharaj, emotional support. He feels alone in the ashram. He feels that he needs a company. So he's looking for a partner. So that's one problem, Maharaj.
Looking for a partner.
He feels alone. He doesn't feel any privacy.
Yes, of course, you have to live like that.
Space.
Brahmachari, you don't have any privacy. Right, you live in the ashram.
He doesn't find his space.
But Maharaj, Delhi Brahmachari Ashram is the royal Brahmachari Ashram.
Really?
All the facilities are provided.
No, really? Okay, and it's mentioned here actually, it's one of the problems for the brahmachari is that, people all get the brahmacharis to do it. And the brahmachari is like the worker, it's like the servant. He has to do everything, the cleaning, he has to clean up after everyone, and he has to go for the, have to get water. Maybe he's the one to go and get the water, bring the water. He has to accept all of this kind of menial service. Brahmacharis often are given these kind of things to do. The menial service, the cleaning and the carrying and this like this. So this is sometimes difficult, becomes a problem for the brahmacharis. But as the brahmachari becomes more established and more advanced, more senior, then naturally he won't have to do these things. So that's the idea, that as one becomes more surrendered and becomes more engaged in Krishna consciousness, then it won't be so much of a problem for him. And if he's actually in Krishna consciousness, he won't mind to do all of these different menial services. It's actually mentioned here in the purport. It says, a brahmachari must perform many menial duties during his student life, but as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, his superiors recognize his spiritual status and elevate him to the higher duties. The innumerable obligations performed on behalf... Oh no, that's the grihasthas, right? So what about grihasthas? What are the difficulties for the grihasthas? What are the troubles for people in grihastha ashram?
From beginning to end, everything is difficult only, Guru.
From beginning to end. Okay, yeah, maintaining.
The process of getting married.
That's the trouble? Getting married?
Of course, it's a big trouble.
Find
the right boy, or to find the right girl.
We hear the glorious householders. We thought the grihastha ashram is glorious.
Yeah, because they tolerate all the trouble and then still continue with the household life, they become glorious householders.
Maharaj, because we are in Krishna conscious, it is very glorious. Any ashram will be glorious.
Yes, right. Without Krishna consciousness, then it would be a lot of trouble. But in Krishna consciousness, certainly very glorious. householders. Bhakti,
Maharaj,
yes?
before getting married, one devotee told me, Prabhu, after getting married, this Grihastha ashram will make you purified. So now I understand why that devotee told me. Every moment I am purifying, Maharaj.
You're getting purified every moment.
Yes, Maharaj.
Oh, very
Those
nice.
devotees, Grihastha ashram, they understand what is purification.
Oh, very nice. Purification, okay. And Bhakti Vedanta Thakur certainly was grihasthan. You know, he thinks about it, he's written about it. Yadina grehe bhajana deke greheti golokabaya. He says, when I'm worshipping my deity at home, then my home becomes Goloka, becomes a spiritual world. And so, you know, it's not always the Griha Andakupam. Prahlad Maharaj told his father, Hiranyakashipu, to leave the home because it was a blind well. But that was Hiranyakashipu. He was a materialistic demon. But for the devotee, the family life is very glorious. And you know, the idea is to be a grihastha, not a grihamedi. That's the point, right? Grihamedi, of course, will be trouble. But grihastha life is very nice. You can enjoy. So you can enjoy Krishna consciousness together. You can practice Krishna consciousness together. Help each other. When Prabhupada saw couples get married, he'd tell them, now you can do twice as much service together. You help each other in your service. The husband helps the wife and the wife helps the husband. So, says here, the innumerable obligations performed on behalf of wife and children constantly harass a householder. But as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, he is automatically elevated by the laws of nature to more enjoyable spiritual occupations, and he somehow minimizes material duties. So this is how it's described here. You have to minimize your material duties, maximize your spiritual duties.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One person joined, one boy joined from Bengali community. He was saying that after the training finished, he has decided that I want to join in the Grihastha ashram. Why? Then he said that brahmacharis means they have to live like das. And Grihasthas means like boss they can.
Oh, really?
Is it an illusion?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's also an illusion. I would agree. Usually, you're going to live together and enter into householder life. It's a partnership. It's not you're the boss.
Oh, they feel that, you know, I am feeding you. Even they feed the God also.
But there has to be that mutual respect, you know, the wife. Of course, usually they say if there's any disagreements at home, if you want to have a peaceful life, then you have to know wife is always right. So if you can get that right, if you remember your wife is always right, then your home can be peaceful. And usually wife is right, you know, she can, women can be very Krishna conscious, it can help a lot to the men. Men tend to get too much entangled in the material things. And sometimes the wife helps the husband to see the light. So cooperation is there. It's very important. Ideal family life is one of the chapters there in the 7th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. We want to encourage the devotees in spiritual life that family life is not the blind well, but it's ideal family life. Ideal family life, grihastha. It's an ashram, it's a shelter. And entering into grihastha life, one should remember that it's not eternal, that you move on. You become a grihasta, and after some time then you can also become vanaprastha. You don't have to remain grihasta the whole life. We should also retire from the family duties. So the successful grihasta ashram, they will move on into the next ashram, to the vanaprastha. And that training should be there from the beginning. From the beginning, that they're trained as a brahmachari, and you get good training as a brahmachari, and you understand how to properly live as a grihasta. Without proper brahmachari training, then it would be difficult to be a good grihasta. But if the good basic is there in the beginning, if one has had a good brahmachari training, then it makes it a lot easier to be a grihasta. The good brahmachari will make a good grihasta. And then the grihasta, they will also move on to become vanaprasthas. And it may even eventually go and take sannyas. You don't know. So this is the Vedic system. All right, so then vanaprasthas. Vanaprasthas, what's the difficulty for them? Well, vanaprasthas, their duty is to actually perform some austerities. And we read about them growing their hair and growing their nails, and like that, not cutting their hair, not cutting their nails, and very great austerities, controlling their food, limiting their food. So those in the vanaprastha, or retired order of life, also perform many duties. And these can also be replaced by ecstatic loving service to Krishna. So vanaprastha, it's not a prominent ashram in our society, but it should be there. There are vanaprasthas. They don't usually advertise themselves as such, as being vanaprasthas, but they are there. And it's important. Srila Prabhupada went through the different ashrams, but Srila Prabhupada only changed his ashram with great reluctance. He was very cautious, and he prepared himself before he moved on. He didn't do anything prematurely. He was in Grihastha life, and then he entered Vanaprastha, and then finally he accepted also sannyas. So as sannyasis also there are difficulties. Right? What do you think are the difficulties for sannyas? Srinivas Gaur was talking about the invitations. People bring you to their home, they want to feed you, they want to eat. They want you to eat their food. If you don't eat, they're not happy. And then you get people also coming and they touch your feet. They want to touch your feet all the time and give you their karma. So these are some problems. Right? What are some other difficulties for sannyasis?
Maharaj, they have to travel always.
Yes, right. Constantly traveling, no proper home, living in the airports or train stations or vans or buses, whatever. No fixed residence. It's not very easy. Prabhupada writes himself that it is certainly painstaking. It is painstaking. There's trouble there. So here it talks about the sannyasi that are inclined to meditate on the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth. For those whose minds are attracted to them. But as soon as a sannyasi takes to preaching the glories of Krishna in every town and village, his life becomes a blissful sequence of beautiful spiritual realizations. So this is Krishna consciousness. In the autumn season, the sky returns to its natural blue color. Okay, so in each of the ashrams, there's some difficulties there, but Krishna consciousness can help us to overcome them. We have to take shelter of devotional service It is by devotional service that we can overcome all of the obstacles.
Maharaj, can I ask a question?
Please?
Maharaj, regarding not cutting the nails and growing the hairs, I always had that question that this would lead to uncleanliness. So how would person elevate in goodness if he doesn't cut his nails and grows the hairs?
Yes. Now, this is not an austerity which Srila Prabhupada encouraged in ISKCON. When devotees asked Srila Prabhupada about doing these things, Prabhupada said, this will just be sense gratification for you people. He said, you people, he said, from the West, he said, this would just be sense gratification, growing long hair, not cutting the nails. He said, he didn't want that. But there is some austerity there. The idea is to minimize the demands of the body and the time we spend taking care of the body, because we can get absorbed in the material body. We can spend a lot of time cutting the hair, shaving the head, and shaving the face, and cutting the nails, and so on. We can spend a lot of time doing these things. So the attention, the concentration becomes more on the body. But the idea is that we want to absorb ourselves in Krishna and thinking of Krishna, not thinking of the material body. This is the point.
Maharaj, that is for Paramahamsas?
Well, Paramahamsas, it's an austerity. I don't know, do Paramahamsas need to do austerity? If somebody's already on that level of Paramahamsa, does he need to do these kind of things? I don't know.
No, not need, but it automatically happens. They will not focus on bodily needs.
They're not focused on the bodily needs, all right, yeah. Might be. Certainly, we don't encourage people to start advertising themselves that they're on the level of Paramahamsas. Generally, the Paramahamsa, though, he won't travel and preach. The Paribrakacharya, they will travel and preach. But the Paramahamsa, he can sit down in one place. He's not going to travel. He'll just sit down in one place and he'll just chant and be Krishna conscious. So that's like the final stage of sannyas. Comes more like Bhakti Vedanta Thakur at the end of life. He was just there in Jagannath Puri. He wasn't going anywhere. But actually I heard that he said, you should get a horse and put me on the horse and take me for preaching. So even though he was at the final stage of life, he still had the desire to go out and preach. And Srila Prabhupada also encouraged like that. There was one time there were devotees, they'd brought vehicles from Germany. They brought a number of vehicles, good vehicles, Mercedes-Benz vehicles. They brought them over land and brought them to India to help in the preaching. Because in those days, in Prabhupada's time, it was very difficult to get a good vehicle. So they brought the vehicles in, and Prabhupada came to Vṛndāvana and he saw the vehicles were all sitting there at the temple. And Prabhupada said, what's happening? And they said, Prabhupada, it's Chaturmasya. We're observing Chaturmasya. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, you should keep preaching. He said, keep going out. He said, you've got the transport, you should go out and preach. He didn't want devotees just to stop everything and sit down and just do their bhajan. And Prabhupada gave the example about the Indian railways. He said, keep the wheels rolling. He said, in the Indian railways, they have that motto, that even the train comes late, but keep the wheels rolling. And so even though he said it's the rainy season and it's difficult to travel, but you should keep going, you keep traveling and go out and distribute books and do kirtan. He said, you don't need to stop everything and just sit down and be here in Vṛndāvana. Another time a sannyasi said to Prabhupada, I just want to be here in Vṛndāvana and chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, your duty is to give Vṛndāvana to others. He said, you have to travel and give Vṛndāvana to others, not to just enjoy it yourself. So like that, when we come to the holy place, it's not just for our own enjoyment, but it's to attract other people to take up devotional service. So, traveling, preaching is important. And of course, if you have long hair and long nails and things, then it would be difficult to go for preaching. But this is more like for people who are recluse, who are in seclusion or something. Then they grow their hair, and they're not cutting their hair, not shaving their face, they're not cutting their nails. They're just fully into bhajan, just chanting the holy name. But this is not what we really encourage in Krishna consciousness. Right? Oh. Okay, just to read a little bit from the purport here at the end. The autumn season signals the time for the animals to go to their respective areas and live more peacefully. This represents a householder's becoming free from the harassment of family duties and being able to devote more of his time to spiritual responsibilities, which are the real goal of life, both for himself and his family. And then they talk, the removal of the muddy layer on the earth is like the removal of the inconveniences of vanaprastha life. And the purification of water is like the sanctification of sannyas life, by one's preaching the glories of Krishna without sex desire. All right? So very interesting purport, interesting verse there. We'll go ahead. Text 35. The clouds, having given up all they possessed, shone forth with purified effulgence, just like peaceful sages who have given up all material desires and are thus free of all sinful propensities. So the clouds have given up all they possessed. In other words, they're not rain clouds anymore, they're just white clouds. So they shone forth with purified effulgence, just like they're compared to peaceful sages who have given up all material desires and are free of all sinful propensities. So great sages, they should be without material desires. So what do we say? What's the verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita? You know that? About not having any desire?
Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta.
Yes, right. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi Kami, Sakale, Ashanta. Right? Bhukti, those who, the karmi, he desires material sense gratification. And Mukti, the jnani, and desires liberation. And the yogi, he wants mystic powers. So none of these people are peaceful. But Krishna Bhakti Nishkam Sa Eshashant. The devotee, one who's doing bhakti yoga, he is peaceful. He has no material desire. He has desires, but his desires are spiritual, simply for the service of Krishna, to dedicate everything in Krishna's service, using everything in the service of Krishna. That is pure spiritual desire. When the clouds, purport, when the clouds are filled with water, they are dark and cover the sun's rays, just as the material mind of an impure man covers the soul shining within. But when the clouds pour down their rain, they become white, and then brilliantly reflect the shining sun. Just as a man who gives up all material desires and sinful propensities becomes purified and then brilliantly reflects his own soul and the Supreme Soul within. So you can see very nicely how they've taken the example of the cloud being covered by the sun being covered by the clouds, and the rays of the sun coming through the clouds. So when the clouds pour down their rain, they become white, and then brilliantly reflect the sun's rays, because there's no water in the clouds anymore. The clouds are clear. So the rays of the sun, it's compared to just like a man who gives up all material desires and sinful propensities. Then he reflects his own soul and the Supreme Soul. And the nature of the soul, Satchit Ananda, bliss and knowledge. We heard earlier, we were speaking about the false ego. So when the false ego is removed, then there's no more covering, and the nature of the soul is actually manifest, brilliantly manifest. So in this way the devotee becomes beautiful. We did one other verse before, we were speaking about the beauty of the devotee, because that's the nature of the soul. The soul is beautiful. The body is not beautiful, but the soul is beautiful. And the more we reflect the soul, the more the nature and qualities of the soul are manifest, then the more beautiful the person will be. All right, we'll just read one more. 36. During this season, the mountains sometimes released their pure water and sometimes did not. Just as experts in transcendental science sometimes give the nectar of transcendental knowledge and sometimes do not. This is an interesting analogy given, that in the rainy season, or during this season, and this autumn, the fall, after the rainy season, so sometimes the water will come and sometimes it doesn't. So it's compared to people or experts in transcendental science, that sometimes they speak and sometimes they don't. So they asked Prabhupada, what is this, Prabhupada? Why is it like this? And Prabhupada simply explained, he said, it means it's not required. He may speak, he may not. He's not required. It's not that he must speak. It's up to him. If he feels like speaking, he will speak. If he doesn't want to speak, he will just be quiet. It's not required. It's not mandatory. So the first part of this chapter described the rainy season, and the second part has been dealing with the autumn season, which begins when the rain stops. During the rainy season, water always flows from the mountains. But during the autumn, the water sometimes flows and sometimes does not. Similarly, great saintly teachers sometimes speak expansively on spiritual knowledge, and sometimes they are silent. The self-realized soul is closely in touch with the Supreme Soul, and according to his desires, a competent spiritual scientist may or may not describe the absolute truth, depending on the specific circumstances. So he's not required. It will depend on the inspiration coming from the Super Soul, whether he should speak or whether not. Just like Srila Prabhupada would go for walks. So sometimes he would speak and sometimes not. Sometimes he would just chant Usually, actually, Prabhupada would walk in the morning, he'd chant. It was a japa walk. But sometimes he would speak. Sometimes he would talk. But not required. Is it clear? So we're hearing about the autumn season. We've heard about the rainy season. Now we're into the autumn season. Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram are enjoying in the forests of Vṛndāvana. They're enjoying the beauty of the forest, and they have their cows also, and their cows are fat and happy. They've been eating lots of nice grass, long grasses. Their milk bags are full. Everything is very pleasant. We're not hearing about any demons coming here in this chapter. It's all very nice, just enjoyment. Krishna's happy eating his rice and yogurt and fruits as well, dates and jammus and the roots, the mullas and other roots there which grow. Everything is provided by nature. Sukadeva Goswami writes about that, or he speaks about that in the 2nd canto Srimad Bhagavatam. He says even, are there no torn clothes on the road? He said, you can lay down on the ground is flat, you don't need a bed, and you have arms, you don't need a pillow, and you get water from the river. He said, and the same way here we're hearing Lord Krishna would eat the roots and the fruits from the trees and the roots which would grow. Everything's provided by nature. The cows are giving the milk. It's all over the fields. Their udders are full. The milk is dripping from their udders all over the fields. Everything is there. You want to get some milk? It's certainly, you go to the Brijbasis, they'll give you some milk. All right? Any questions or comments?
Maharaj, I was also thinking about Jada Bharat. He did not speak usually, but when King Rahuguna offended him, he spoke about self-realization.
Oh yes, very nice, right? Very nice example. Yes, Jada Bharat didn't speak. And similarly also Prahlad wouldn't speak. But when his class friends inquired from him, then he spoke. Right? And there's another example.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He did not speak to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days. Just listened to him.
Ah, yes.
And then he explained Vedanta.
And you have Narada also, when he was serving the great sages. He was doing service for the sages, and so they gave spiritual knowledge to him. They blessed him. Yes, so sometimes they speak. Prahlad Maharaj, sometimes, usually he wouldn't say anything, but when he was with the other boys in the Gurukul, he spoke to them. We read, there's one chapter there, Prahlad instructs his classmates about devotional service. So Prahlad was speaking, and then of course Jada Bharat spoke extensively to Maharaj Rahugana, because Maharaj Rahugana was so shocked that this man looked like somebody who was dumb and imbecile, but he was a great self-realized soul. So Maharaj Rahugana was really surprised. But they had the wonderful conversation. Yes. So, thank you very much for that, Prabhu. Very nice point. Yes, any other points? Okay, then we'll finish here tonight, and tomorrow we'll go on. We can finish the chapter tomorrow, and we have to prepare to go on to the Venu Gita. So we'll see how the time goes, how long it takes us to finish this chapter tomorrow. Okay, so thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Vedanta SB Maharaj ki jai.
Gaur Bhakti.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you, Prabhus. Hare Krishna.